Ethan began noticing the subtle shifts in Mia's demeanor with a growing unease. At first, it was the little things, the way she mentioned Liam's name with increasing frequency, her sudden interest in his witty remarks, and the way her eyes lit up when recounting his latest quip during dinner conversations. That Liam, she'd laugh, placing her fork down, he's such a joker. Today, he said. And she would dive into a story, her words rapid, her expressions animated in a way Ethan hadn't seen directed at him in months. It wasn't jealousy that struck Ethan first. No, it was confusion, then curiosity. The texts began to follow. He would hear her phone buzzing relentlessly late into the night. When he glanced over, he would catch her smiling, her fingers typing swiftly before she tilted the screen away or tucked the phone under her pillow. When he asked casually, "Who's that?" she would respond dismissively. "Just work stuff. Liam was helping me with a project." One evening, Ethan noticed something that set his chest tightening. He walked into their bedroom and saw Mia scrolling through photos on her phone. She didn't hear him approach, and he caught a glimpse of Liam's face in several images. "What are you looking at?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Startled, Mia jumped slightly and locked her phone. "Oh, just some team-building photos from work. You know, harmless fun." But Ethan wasn't sure. Over the next week, he started to pay closer attention. She was protective of her phone in ways she never had been before, always angling the screen away from him, locking it the moment she saw him approach. One afternoon, when her phone buzzed and she was in the shower, Ethan glanced at the notification. It was a text from Liam. "You always know how to make my day, Mia Redheart." That emoji wasn't the kind of thing she usually received from colleagues. Ethan's mind raced, but he resolved to stay calm. He wanted to believe her, to trust her, but a knot of suspicion began to tighten in his stomach. That weekend, he decided to test the waters. "How about dinner tomorrow?" he suggested over breakfast. "Just us. It's been a while." Mia hesitated, brushing crumbs off her plate. "Oh, I promised Liam I'd help him prepare for a presentation. I'll be back late." The excuse landed like a lead weight, but Ethan said nothing. On Monday, Ethan drove to Mia's workplace on a whim. He parked across the street, not really sure what he was looking for. As the evening wore on, he saw Mia and Liam step out of the office together. Liam leaned toward her, whispering something, and she laughed, covering her mouth. The closeness between them was palpable. Ethan told himself it could still be innocent, friends, nothing more. But his resolve faltered later that night when Mia's phone buzzed again. She was asleep, and Ethan saw the message light up her screen. "Couldn't have done it without you. Drinks soon? Just us?" Fueled by doubt, Ethan began observing Mia more closely. He noticed she had started dressing differently, paying more attention to her outfits when she went to work. Subtler changes caught his eye too. New perfume, a habit of checking her reflection before leaving, even a softer tone when she spoke to Liam on the phone. Then came the evening she didn't come home until almost midnight. "We had to run through the presentation 3 times, she explained when Ethan asked. But he noted the faint scent of wine on her breath and the fact she avoided meeting his gaze. Unable to bear it any longer, Ethan decided to check their phone bill. It revealed a staggering number of texts and calls to Liam, most late at night or during weekends. He felt his heart sink further. One night, Ethan found himself alone in their home office. Mia's laptop was on the desk, her email account still logged in. He hesitated, his hands trembling as he hovered over the inbox. Finally, he clicked. At first, it was mundane, work-related correspondence, forwarded memos. But then he found it, a thread titled, "Can't stop thinking about last night?" His pulse raced as he opened it. The messages were cryptic but undeniably intimate. "Liam, last night was amazing. I can't stop replaying it in my mind. You looked beautiful. Mia, you're too sweet. I needed that. You always know how to make me feel special." Ethan's chest tightened as he read on, the casual flirtations, the subtle references to time spent together outside work hours. The next day, Ethan confronted Mia. "Are you and Liam?" He began, struggling to find the words. Her face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the texts," Ethan said flatly, refusing to elaborate but giving enough to let her know the jig was up. Mia's mouth opened and closed as she struggled to form a defense. It's not what you think, she finally managed. Liam and I are just friends. Ethan didn't know whether to believe her. But one thing was certain, the doubt that had taken root in his mind was no longer just a shadow. It was a storm. It was an ordinary Friday evening, or at least that's what I thought as I set the table for dinner. The usual clinking of plates and the soft hum of Mia moving around the kitchen filled the house. She seemed calm, almost serene. I wanted to believe that the tension of the past weeks was finally behind us, but something in her eyes told me otherwise. She sat across from me, her fork tracing patterns in her mashed potatoes instead of eating. I was halfway through asking her about her day when she cut me off mid-sentence. "Ethan," she said, her voice low but steady, "I need to talk to you about something." The tone was different, serious, deliberate. My stomach nodded. "Okay," I said, setting my fork down, trying to read her expression. "What is it?" She looked at me, her lips pressing together as if she were trying to keep the words from spilling out. Then she said it, with a calmness that struck me harder than if she'd shouted it. "I've been thinking about having one last experience with someone else." For a moment, I didn't understand. The words hung in the air, sharp and jagged. "What?" I asked, certain I had misheard her. She met my gaze, her eyes unflinching. "I've been feeling like there's something I need to do, something I never got to experience before we got married. I don't want to look back someday and feel like I missed out." It felt like a slap to the face. My first reaction was disbelief, then a rush of anger so intense I could feel it rising in my throat. Are you serious right now, Mia?" My voice cracked despite my best effort to stay calm. "Yes," she said softly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking about it for a while. I don't want it to mean anything. I don't want it to ruin us. But I feel like I'll regret it forever if I don't." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "You're talking about sleeping with another man," I said flatly. "Is that what this is?" "Yes," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly now. "But it's not because I don't love you, Ethan. I do. It's just, I've only ever been with you. And I can't stop wondering." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. Every sentence was like a fresh stab wound. "So, let me get this straight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want to have sex with someone else so you don't feel like you've missed out on life? And you think that's something we can just move past?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't back down. "I know how it sounds. I know it's selfish. But I'd rather tell you now than do something behind your back. I want to be honest about how I feel." "Honest?" The word felt like poison. "You think this is honesty?" I shot back, my voice rising. "This is betrayal, Mia. You're sitting here, asking for my permission to cheat on me. It's not cheating if you know about it," she said quietly. That was it, the tipping point. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "If you do this," I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage, "we're done. Do you understand me? You can't come back from this." She flinched but didn't look away. "I don't want to lose you, Ethan. But I can't keep this feeling bottled up either." I walked out of the room, unable to sit there and listen to her calmly dismantle everything we'd built together. I went to our bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My hands were trembling, my mind racing. How could she even think this was okay? How long had she been planning this? Was it about Liam? The thought hit me like a freight train. Liam. The way she'd been acting around him, the texts, the smiles, it all clicked into place. Was he the man she wanted this experience with? The idea made my blood boil. I paced the room, trying to collect my thoughts. After what felt like hours, Mia knocked softly on the door. "Ethan, can we talk?" "I don't think there's anything left to say," I said through the door. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "Just let me explain." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. She stood there, her face streaked with tears. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. I don't know how to stop feeling this way." "Is it Liam?" I asked bluntly. Her silence was answer enough. I felt a wave of nausea. "Jesus, Mia. This is worse than I thought. How long have you been thinking about this? How long have you been fantasizing about him?" "It's not like that," she insisted. Nothing has happened. I swear. But yes, I feel something for him. And it's made me realize that maybe I need to explore this side of myself. Her words were like gasoline on an already roaring fire. You need to explore yourself? What about me, Mia? What about us? I've given you everything, and now you're throwing it all away because you've got some crush on your coworker? I'm not throwing us away, she pleaded. I'm trying to be honest about what I need. You need to make a choice, I said coldly. It's either me or this experience. There's no middle ground. She looked at me with a desperation I'd never seen before. Then, please? Choose, I said, my voice hard as steel. Because if you go through with this, we're over. She broke down then, collapsing onto the bed in tears. But I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. How do you comfort someone who just shattered your heart? That night, I slept in the guest room, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. I knew the moment Mia grabbed her overnight bag and walked out the door that this was the end. She hadn't said where she was going, but she didn't have to. Her deliberate silence screamed the truth louder than words. Liam. She had chosen him over us, over me. The echoes of our last conversation hung in the air like an open wound, raw and festering. The weekend dragged on like a sentence without end. Every creak of the house, every stray noise made me look up, half expecting to see her walking in, a guilty smile on her face, saying she had changed her mind. But the house remained silent, suffocatingly so. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, working out, watching mindless TV, but nothing could stop my mind from replaying the image of her with him. Friday night turned into Saturday morning. By then, I was beyond anger. I was hollow. The man who had fought for our marriage, who had begged her to reconsider, had disappeared, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat on the couch, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of betrayal settle into my chest like a stone. By Sunday evening, I was done. Done waiting, done hoping, done pretending that any of this was salvageable. I spent hours staring at the closet, the suitcases stacked neatly on the top shelf. I knew what I had to do, even if the thought of it tore me apart. It wasn't until late Sunday night that I heard her car pull into the driveway. My heart thudded in my chest, a mixture of dread and finality. She walked in looking tired but not regretful. If anything, she seemed lighter, freer. The sight of her like that made me feel sick. Hi, she said softly, setting her bag down by the door. Hi, I replied, my voice devoid of any warmth. She hesitated, glancing at me as if trying to gauge my mood. Can we talk? I gestured toward the couch, already knowing where this was going. She sat across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took a deep breath. I know you're hurt, she began. And I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause you pain, Ethan. I almost laughed at the absurdity of her words. You didn't want to cause me pain? Do you even hear yourself, Mia? She winced, but I didn't stop. You left this house to sleep with another man. You made a choice, Mia. You chose him. So don't sit here and tell me you didn't want to hurt me. Because you did. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't move me. Not this time. I needed to do this for me, she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't about you, Ethan. It was about me trying to understand what I want, who I am. And what did you figure out? I asked coldly. Did he make you feel alive? Did he give you the thrill you were looking for? Then, please. Just answer me. I shouted, my voice breaking for the first time. She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. It wasn't about him, she whispered. It was about me. Her words felt like a slap. I stood up, pacing the room as anger and despair twisted inside me. Do you even realize what you've done? You've destroyed everything. A marriage. And for what? For a weekend of self-discovery? She didn't respond, and in that silence, I found my answer. There was nothing left to say. I walked to the bedroom and grabbed the suitcases from the closet. The sound of them unzipping seemed to jolt her. What are you doing? She asked, following me. What does it look like? I snapped, throwing clothes into the suitcase without care. I'm leaving, Mia. No, she said, grabbing my arm. Please, Ethan. Don't do this. We can work through this. Work through this, I said, pulling away. You think this is something we can fix? You spent the weekend with another man. You crossed a line we can't come back from. Her tears fell freely now, but I didn't stop packing. The love I once felt for her was still there, buried beneath the hurt, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. When the suitcase was full, I zipped it shut and carried it to the living room. She stood by the door, her arms crossed over her chest as if she could block my way. Ethan, please, she begged. Don't do this. I love you. I laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. Her face crumpled, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I picked up a pen and paper from the desk and started writing. The words came slowly at first, then faster, pouring out of me in a torrent of grief and finality. Mia, I loved you with everything I had. I built my life around you. But I can't stay in a marriage where I'm constantly questioning my worth, where I'm second place to your self-discovery. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Goodbye. I folded the note and placed it on the counter. She reached for it, but I grabbed my suitcase and walked past her before she could read it. Ethan, she called after me, her voice breaking. Don't go. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. As I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I had lost everything, but maybe, just maybe, I had also saved myself. It was a cold autumn evening when my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I was in my new apartment, halfway through organizing some shelves, when the screen lit up with Mia's name. I hadn't heard from her in months, not since I walked out of that house, leaving behind the life we'd built. I stared at the phone, debating whether to answer. My hand hovered over the screen as it stopped ringing, only to immediately buzz again. Something about the persistence made my stomach tighten. Hello. I finally answered, my voice guarded. Ethan, a familiar voice said, though shaky and raw, like she'd been crying. I need to talk to you. What's going on, Mia? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She hesitated, then burst into sobs. I was attacked. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? Are you okay? Tonight, she said between gulps of air. Someone broke into the house. He grabbed me. He hit me and she trailed off, unable to continue. Jesus Christ, Mia, I said, already grabbing my car keys. Did you call the police? Yes, she whispered. They just left. I didn't know who else to call. Where are you now? I asked, heading for the door. Home, she said. I didn't want to go anywhere. I'm coming over, I said firmly, cutting off any protest she might have had. The drive to our house felt surreal. I hadn't set foot there since I left, and as the familiar streets blurred past, old memories resurfaced. I tried to push them down, focusing on the present. What had happened? By her. Who would want to hurt her? When I arrived, the house looked the same, but something felt off. The porch light flickered, and the front door hung slightly ajar. I pushed it open cautiously, finding Mia sitting on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. Her face was bruised, a purple welt forming on her cheekbone, and her hands trembled as she clutched a mug of tea. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Ethan, she breathed, her voice cracking. I sat across from her, unsure if I should reach out. What happened? I asked, my tone softer than I expected. She shuddered, then began recounting the ordeal. I was upstairs, taking a shower. When I came out, I heard noises downstairs. At first, I thought it was nothing, maybe the wind or something. But then I saw a man standing in the kitchen. She stopped, her voice faltering. He had a mask on. He grabbed me before I could scream. My fists clenched involuntarily. Did he do anything else? She shook her head quickly. No. He hit me, shoved me against the counter. Then he said, she swallowed hard. He said, stay away from married men. Then he left. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I felt a sickening twist in my gut. Do you think it was Liam's wife? She flinched at his name but didn't deny it. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe someone who knows about us. The anger I'd buried since our breakup began to stir, but it wasn't directed at her this time. Did you recognize him at all? Anything about him? No, she said, her voice small. He was wearing gloves and a hoodie. I couldn't even see his eyes properly. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. The idea that someone had been in this house, hurting her, filled me with a protective rage I didn't expect. Despite everything that had happened between us, I couldn't stand the thought of her being attacked like this. What did the police say? I asked. They took a report and checked the house, but there's not much to go on, she said. They said they'd patrol the area, but that's it. That's it? I snapped. That's all they're going to do? She shrugged helplessly, tears streaming down her face. I'm scared, Ethan. What if he comes back? I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to promise I'd protect her, but another part of me reminded me that we weren't married anymore. This wasn't my responsibility. And yet, as I sat there, looking at her bruised face, I felt a pang of guilt. Guilt for leaving her, guilt for not being here when she needed someone. You should stay somewhere else for a while, I said finally. A hotel or a friend's place. Just until you feel safe. She shook her head. I can't. This is my home. I can't let him scare me out of it. Then at least get better locks, I said. And maybe a security system? I will, she said softly. Thank you for coming. Her gratitude made my chest ache. I stood, unsure what else to say. Mia, whoever this was, they're a coward. They won't come back. But if they do, call the police. And call me. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. Do you hate me, Ethan? The question caught me off guard. Did I? I wanted to, after everything she'd put me through. But looking at her now, vulnerable and afraid, I realized that hatred wasn't what I felt. No, I said finally. I don't hate you, Mia. I don't know how to feel anymore. She nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I left soon after, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Driving back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the image of her sitting there, broken and scared. Despite everything, part of me still cared for her. Part of me always would. But the other part, the part that remembered the betrayal, the lies, the weekend she spent with Liam, kept me from turning the car around. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Mia's bruised face haunted me, as did the warning left by the attacker. Stay away from married men. The words replayed in my head, over and over. Was this revenge? A warning? Or something more sinister? One thing was certain. My feelings for Mia were far from resolved. And as much as I wanted to move on, this attack had reopened wounds I wasn't sure would ever fully heal. I was at work when I got the call. It was a number I didn't recognize, and for a moment, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. A woman's voice, calm but professional, greeted me on the other end. Is this Ethan Carter? She asked. Yes, I replied, unsure of what to expect. I'm calling from Memorial General, she said. I'm sorry to inform you that Mia Carter has passed away. Her words didn't register at first. I felt like I had misheard her, that maybe this was some sort of mistake. What? I finally managed to say. What are you talking about? Mia underwent a medical procedure and suffered complications. We tried to contact her next of kin, but your name was listed as her emergency contact. I'm so sorry for your loss. Her emergency contact. Of course. She hadn't updated it. Why would she? My mind raced, trying to process what I was hearing. What kind of procedure? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. She had cosmetic surgery, the woman said, hesitating slightly. There were complications during recovery, an infection. She didn't make it. The call ended with more formalities, but I barely heard them. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the wall, the weight of the news sinking in. Mia was gone. Just like that. I took the rest of the day off and went home. The city felt strangely muted as I drove, the world outside moving on as if nothing had happened. But my mind was spinning, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with her, every fight, every tender moment, every betrayal. It was surreal. Mia, the woman I had loved, fought with, and eventually left, was no longer alive. There was no going back, no chance for closure, no final words. When I got home, I sat on the couch, staring at the floor. The last time I'd seen her flash through my mind, her bruised face after the attack, the fear in her eyes. I'd felt something for her then, but it wasn't enough to bridge the gap between us. I'd left her in that house, alone with her choices, her regrets. Now she was gone. Over the next few days, I learned more about what had happened. Mia had decided to get cosmetic surgery, a procedure to reshape her nose, something she'd always been self-conscious about. I remembered her mentioning it once years ago, in passing. "Do you think I'd look better with a different nose?" she'd asked, half joking. I told her she was beautiful the way she was. But that was before everything fell apart. Apparently, she had gone through with the surgery a few weeks ago, hoping it would be a fresh start, a way to rebuild her life after everything. But complications arose. An infection had set in, spreading faster than the doctors could treat it. By the time they realized how serious it was too late. I couldn't decide how I felt about it. Sad? Angry? Empty? Part of me wanted to mourn her, but another part felt like I had already grieved for her long ago. When I left her, when I closed the door on our life together, I'd said goodbye to the woman she once was. This just felt like the final chapter in a story I had already finished reading. The funeral was small. I debated whether to go at all. I wasn't sure if I belonged there, if my presence would be welcomed. But in the end I went. Not for her, but for me. To see her one last time. To make peace with everything. The service was held at a modest chapel, the kind of place Mia would have liked. Simple, unpretentious. A few friends and coworkers were there, along with her family. I hadn't seen her parents in years, and when they spotted me, their expressions were a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. I sat in the back, keeping to myself. When it was time to view the body, I hesitated. Did I want to see her like that? The memory of her alive, even in those final, strained moments, felt easier to hold on to. But I forced myself to walk up to the casket. She looked peaceful, almost unrecognizable. The surgery had altered her face in ways I hadn't expected. It was still Mia, but not the Mia I knew. Her features were softer, her nose slightly different. I wondered if she had been happy with the results before things went wrong, if she had looked in the mirror and felt like she was finally becoming the person she wanted to be. "I'm sorry," I whispered, unsure if I meant it for her or for myself. After the funeral, I went back to my apartment and poured myself a drink. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. For the first time in months, I let myself think about everything. Our marriage, the way it fell apart, the choices we both made. Mia had always been searching for something she could never quite find. I used to think I could be enough for her, that our life together would fill whatever void she felt. But I was wrong. And when she turned to Liam, it wasn't just about him. It was about her trying to reclaim a piece of herself she thought she had lost. Now she was gone, and all that was left were questions I'd never have answers to. Did she regret what happened between us? Did she miss me? Did she ever truly find what she was looking for? As I stared into my glass, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The bitterness, the pain, even the lingering resentment, they were gone. I had let go of her long before this, even if I hadn't fully admitted it to myself. Mia's death didn't feel like the loss of a wife or a lover. It felt like the loss of a chapter in my life, one that had already closed. I raised my glass in a silent toast to her memory, to the good times and the bad, to everything we had been and everything we couldn't be. "Goodbye, Mia," I said softly, the words carrying a finality I hadn't felt before. And as I sat there, the weight of the past began to lift, leaving me with nothing but the present and the faint hope of moving forward.